Hello, my name is Kasia Zolich, and today I will talk to you about photography from the perspective of photo books, photography publications, and zines. Uh, I love self published publications, zines, photo books. Therefore, I would like to share with you a few examples of contemporary Polish photo books slash zines that use different narrative perspectives to tell their story. Surely, your first question is, what do I understand by the term photo books? And the first thing that maybe comes to your mind may be a large photo album by a well known photographer that sits prominently in your living room. You take it out to admire beautiful shots. That's the so called coffee table book. Another association might be a photo book from a newsstand made after a journey or a family album you received after someone close to you got married. If you are more inclined towards the artistic aspect of photography, you might associate photo books with various exhibitions, often serving as catalogs for the exhibition. These books aim to capture the essence of significant events in artists' lives, such as an exhibition, documenting the works displayed. Today, I want to talk about something different. I will tell you about the phenomenon of photo books that definitely go beyond the aforementioned distinctions. On one hand, I would like to discuss photo books, and on the other, self publishing. So, self published zines or self published photo books that are made for personal use or for community use, usually prepared in small editions, collectively referred to as zines, or generally speaking, self publishing. Of course, they're very often handmade, um, and they can be about everything. And the zines themselves, the term is not solely used to photo books, of course, it's used for illustrations, comics, and so on. Naturally, the next question arises, how do photo books differ from zine? The answer lies in the strategies behind creating each. When talking about a photo book, I refer to a book where the main principle of storytelling or action is the image itself. Unlike albums that showcase a photographer's best shots or the most important moments of an event or trip, photo books have their own internal assumptions that are subordinate to what they aim to communicate. Photo books that use storytelling will operate differently from conceptual books based on various objects or found photographs, and differently from books based on formal principles seeking various visual connections. Nevertheless, all these strategies can be used in photo books. So, how does a zine differ from a photo book? In many cases, a photo book will have some sort of publisher behind it, functioning within the traditional publishing circuit. The publisher is responsible for the entire project team, which may include photographers, editors, graphic designers responsible for layout, for example, and of course the publisher who oversees the overall appearance of the publication. In the case of a zine, very often the photographer becomes all these roles at once. They take the photos, design, put everything together, and often print it on their own printer. Furthermore, they are responsible for distributing their zine, which, in case of having a publisher, may not concern the creator anymore. If you want to learn more about self publishing, different operating strategies, and the possibilities you have, I encourage you to visit Małe Nakłady, Small Editions profile, where you can find an online library of lesser known photo book publications. You can also find collectives promoting the knowledge in your own country following the DIY, do it yourself spirit. Małe Nakłady is something, or Małe Nakłady or small editions, is something I created as an online library that served the purpose of documenting the works of different artists and of course promoting their works. You can find many self-published photo books and zines from Poland, and I have the different section of photo books from Hungary. If you are willing to send me your photo book, I will be very grateful to incorporate it in my small and humble collection. Of course, I also recommend in Małe Nakłady, in Small Editions channel on Vimeo. I have over 130 publications documented at the moment, and there are still new photo books coming in the queue, let's say. You can also find some interviews with artists behind the books, so dig into it if you're interested. I also recommend Bruno Keschel classic book Self-Publish Be Happy, a DIY photo book manual and manifesto, which serve a great purpose in presenting self-publishing culture, self-publishing photography culture to wider audience. And Bruno Keschel divides photo books into 5 sections. One is being playful, the second one is intimate stories, it's called Be Yourself. The third one are based on storytelling, and the fourth one it's self-publish, be a team. So this is a collective approach to creating a publication. And self-publish, be crafty, which is describing photo books as objects of as a material object that itself can be very interesting as an object. In Poland, I strongly recommend Oficyna Peryferie, a publishing house, a Polish publishing house, and Michał Chojecki's book, How to Make a Zine, Self-Publishing for Artists. I know there are plans for the book to be available in English as well, so I hope it will be accessible to all listeners very soon. I will put the links to these profiles below. So today I would like to talk about 2 visual storytelling strategies in photo books, using as an example 3 contemporary Polish photo books. I will start with the most recent one that has just been premiered. The first, it's called In Praise of Shadows by Tomek Kawecki. It's a book published together with Raz Publishing, a small publishing collective. So Tomek Kawecki is a visual artist who also works as a photography lecturer at the Academy of Photography, using photography as one of his tools. He describes his photography practice as a subjective document. This is Kawecki's first book. The second book I would like to talk about is Bewitchment by Kamil Śleszyński, which was created in 2023 in collaboration with Krzysztof Orłowski. So I need to make a little off-topic notice because it's worth mentioning Zindeka, which is a small publishing house and library run by Krzysztof, which I highly recommend, and I will also put the link to his profile below. So Bewitchments is Kamil Śleszyński's 5th book. In his previous projects, he explored personal themes in a highly documentary manner. He also experiments heavily with the form of photo books. We can find both strictly documentary publications, such as Volka, and very personal ones, such as Prolog in his portfolio. In Bewitchments, we see a combination of these two strategies. The third book is Rosty, which can be translated as Adhesives by Marta Przybyło. Marta is a book designer, also an exhibition curator, art historian, and artist, of course. She was closely associated with the Archaeology of Photography Foundation, where she created many exhibitions and books. And she's also a co-founder of the Syreny and Glonejady collective. Her book is a personal experience of motherhood recorded in the form of a visual diary. I would like these books to serve as examples of choices in visual and narrative strategies, depending on the form of the book and how it can be used as a tool of art, of course. So let's see In Praise of Shadows. On the publisher's website, we read about the book in this way. Utilizing his distinct approach to the medium, the viewer is confronted with a profound study of the natural world and the shadows inevitably casts. Beneath our clouded and accustomed perception of the material world, Tomasz Kawecki assumes the existence of a shadow realm untouched by human appropriation, a hiding place for animistic and primordial beliefs that is still unexplored in a world that is otherwise measured and exploited. A title of the book comes from an essay written by Junichiro Tanizaki in 1933. In it, the Japanese writer defines the basis of Japanese aesthetics, referring to the category of shadow as a metaphor for ambiguity, ephemerality, and transience. So Tomek Kawecki's book begins with a drawing and number 1, which is a chapter numbering. Immediately after that, we see the first photo, which is a snake, essentially an Ouroboros, which was a symbol of the Gnostics. Thus, it is a symbol of a snake eating its own tail, where there is some kind of unity of the spiritual and physical. Kawecki's book is full of symbolism, but I would like to draw attention to how the narrative develops through editing here. The narrative is introduced gradually, leading us slowly into the issues and the world we will observe. At the beginning, we have such a compositional clamp. The first and last drawings that close the visual story. After the final illustration, we find a short story that places us inside the creator's world and verbally introduces us to the details of the journey. On the last page and photo, we see 7 Latin names listed, which denote various types of mushrooms. The person depicted in the first picture is a drawing of a male traveler with a stick holding a mushroom. The mushroom motif will appear throughout the book quite often, quite overpowering the entire narrative. So here you can see the different mushrooms he's talking about in at the end of the book. From an aesthetic standpoint, we move in total darkness. All photos are black and white. We use only 2 types of photo layout on the page. Vertical photos always have a white side on the right or left, and horizontal ones are foldouts, and we have 2 photos that are contained within a frame. These are photos marking, in my opinion, a certain kind of transition of the next stage of the story. The arrangement of photos is always on the right or left side, on the obverse or reverse. The first part of the book introduces us to the symbols we will be dealing with. So we have a man with a mushroom, a snake eating its own tail, a golden apple, and then a transition to some kind of a cave, and a type of a hero, or heroine rather, who stands in the water, perhaps in this cave, illuminated by light from behind. This person will only turn to us at the very end of the book after undergoing a metamorphosis. The moment of transition occurs through a ruined house that leads us to the second part of the book. I don't want to spoil anything here, but I definitely want to highlight some additional characters who appear here, because we have one human character and then a whole host of symbolic characters or objects. Among these objects, we'll encounter a stuffed bird, eggs, a dead animal in a tunnel, a ritually hanged cat, snails, mushrooms, bones, a kind of a temple, a figure eaten by mushrooms, an altar, and finally in the middle some kind of a ritual. At the very end, we find that the person who appears in the first part of the book, submerged in this water, turns to us and stands very close to the light shining through the door of this cave. Kawecki's book guides the reader through a clear path, keeping them in suspense for a long time, ultimately resolving this tension at a key moment, reaching a kind of climax where many things are explained. The narration is very classical, presenting us with a hero who gradually plays various roles in the presented world and undergoes a transformation, changing during the story, based on the concept of the hero's journey. Here you can see it on the slide. We start with a call to adventure, then there is the beginning of transformation, and the hero receives support from mentors or helpers. After passing through a trial or abyss, there is a moment of transformation, after which the hero returns changed, but also returns to the starting point, continuing the narration in a cycle. Kawecki gives us a lot of freedom of interpretation practically until the very end, because the text in the book is in the final part. It has a poetic character, telling subjectively, resembling a kind of short story that can change our perspective, especially visually. A similar narrative structure can be seen in Kamil Śleszyński's book Bewitchments, which begins with a narrative approach at the beginning, establishing the type of narration we will encounter throughout the story. Śleszyński initially presents a biographical story, starting with the death of the mother, who later returns as a kind of a spirit, leaving her mark on subsequent generations. So this book represents a kind of exploration of the present through family and historical pasts, blurring the boundaries between truth and fiction through visual narration. As you can see, Śleszyński uses archival and documentary photographs to tell his story. He employs various layout methods, including spreads, both in horizontal and vertical orientations within the individual pages. The first photo is an archival picture from a funeral, perhaps related to the aforementioned mother, who later appears as a weeping spirit in front of her daughter. The narration is not linear, instead it takes on a structure similar to a rhizome. Archival photos connect through associations with portraits of loved ones. The people depicted in the photos become archetypes, transitioning from childhood to parents, imparting life to new children marked with scars of the past. The narration circulates endlessly, intertwining the past with the present. In Śleszyński's book, we also see the motifs of a snake, a dead animal, a child, solitary trees, scars, an eye. So interestingly, both Kawecki and Śleszyński present subjective narratives without a specific protagonist, creating universal stories of transformation. In contrast to these narratives, Marta Przybyło's book delves into similar themes of transformation and shadow aspects, but uses highly personal symbolism extending beyond conventional symbols to construct her own images. Wzrosty, Adhesives, is a book about Marta Przybyło's experience during her pregnancy and the first months of her child's life. In a way, it is a documentary book, although it is not devoid of personal references and narration. Przybyło describes her experience of motherhood and a created visual diary, saying, "Motherhood is for me a complex combination of extreme feelings and emotions. Sometimes euphoria and happiness, other times monstrous fear, especially fear of the death or illness of the child." The title of her book, Adhesions, refers to bands of scar tissue that form between abdominal tissues and organs, usually smooth surfaces that allow for free movement. Adhesions here serve as a metaphor for connection. In this context, the formal solutions found in Przybyło's book are also interesting, especially visible on the cover, where the photo can be lifted, symbolizing growth. The cover of Wzrosty is made from marbled end papers, as the author says. They seemed interesting to me because of their delicate pattern and color scheme, a combination of red and garnet transitioning into green. They evoked associations with blood vessels on the interior of the body. They also matched the red drawings inside. Additionally, I found it intriguing to reverse the standard placement. What is usually inside was meant to be on the outside. This, combined with the open spine and red trim, is significant to me and resonates with the message of the book. However, I wanted to add a photo to it. I searched for a long time for one that wouldn't repeat what was already inside, but would fit with the overall theme of the book. Both images on the cover overlap, creating layers that do not allow light to pass through. The publication contains both photographs and drawings. The arrangement of the photos is inconsistent. They overlap, reinforcing the impression of barely controlled chaos. The connections between them are based on loose visual associations: color, shape, texture, and composition. The drawings replicate shapes found in the images, and the color spots mimic organic forms of everyday life: dried flowers, food, laundry, body parts, and space. Red dominates as the main color. Adhesions tell an organic story that is difficult to assign to a traditional narrative structure. It reaches closer to the body than to an image. By treating each photo as a separate event in the visual story, we jump back and forth between a clearly defined beginning and the end. It is worth noting that a woman stands at the beginning and the child stands at the end. An interesting motif appearing in the adhesions is the choice of a subject. In previous examples, we had a clearly defined transition space beyond the photographing subject. In the case of Przybyło, we are more in the everyday space and closer to our reality. The transition takes place in a symbolic space that is familiar to us. So we observe images of animals and shadows, but these are animals represented in an unconventional way, for example, made of cardboard or seen from a child's perspective. Lonely dried plants and structures are located in the domestic space, while in previous examples they were clearly defined outdoor spaces. Attempting to describe internal states, premonitions, and emotions through photography has a long history. It seems interesting to apply the archetype of the shadow described by Jung to the above narratives. The shadow was a term borrowed by Jung from Friedrich Nietzsche. This concept represents the hidden personality of every individual. Outwardly, most of us seem and believe ourselves to be good and kind people. However, there are parts within us that are suppressed. These are inherited instincts. The archetype of the shadow doesn't exist solely within individuals. Groups of people, cults, religious groups, political parties can also possess the archetype of the shadow. These groups can at any moment reveal their dark side to justify acts of violence against humanity. The more we suppress the shadow, the more it becomes destructive, cunning, and dangerous. According to Jung, when we suppress it, it can manifest itself in the form of neurosis or psychosis. Furthermore, Jung identified two typologies within the archetype of the shadow. The first is the personal shadow. This is the one we all have, with all our little frustrations, fears, selfishness, typical negativity. The second is the impersonal shadow. It contains the most archetypal essence of evil and accompanies genocide, merciless killing, etc. Each of these books reveals the archetype of the shadow in different aspects: collective, Kawecki, intergenerational, Śleszyński, and individual, Przybyło. Photography serves as a wonderful tool for this purpose, leaving us between representation and fiction. I hope that these three examples have given you some insight into the world of photo books and the world of publications and the different strategies that photographers use to tell their stories. Whether it's through a carefully curated selection of images, a layout, or a combination of text and image, there are endless possibilities for photographers to express themselves and connect with their audience through the medium of photo books. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy exploring the world of photo book publications further on your own.